before we get into anything, I want to say this up front. I love Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. I did not always feel that way when I first played it, but I do not think I appreciated it for what it was. I probably wanted something closer to a traditional Metal Gear game, and Rising is obviously not that. But over the years, as I grew older and more mature, I've completely come around on it, and at this point I genuinely think it is one of the best games in the entire series, especially for a spin-off. It is fast, stylish, and absolutely ridiculous in all the right ways, and mechanically it has aged incredibly well. But visually, this is where I've always had a problem with it, even back then when it came out. You know, when it first released, I remember being disappointed by how it looked. The art direction was great, you know, the character designs were great, they're absolutely splendidly designed characters. The animations were great, everything else was fantastic, but the actual image quality, the textures, and the environments, they always looked very rough. And I do not just mean old game rough, a lot of the textures looked low res even for a PS3 and Xbox 360 era title. The image looked a bit washed out, and the color was very desaturated in some areas, and a lot of the environments looked very flat as a result. There was no ambient occlusion, and the whole thing always felt like it had an amazing visual identity trapped underneath a kind of muddy presentation. And the worst part of it is that Rising never really got a proper modern release. A lot of my viewers in one of my videos have actually made me aware that there was no PS4 5 version, and no Xbox One remaster or anything like no current gen update. This game's still stuck on 360 era, right? The only thing you can really play it on is PC, if you want to kind of, you know, remaster it. But for the consoles, it kind of sucks, right? And one of my viewers pointed out, in Japan, this game was basically trapped on PS3 officially, which is insane considering how loved it is now. But I think this game's a lot more popular in the West than it is in Japan. So, because Konami had not done it yet, I tried to remaster it myself. Kind of. And I say kind of because I want to be honest, this is not a massive transformation, or, you know, this is not really big like some of my other videos. It's not a massive night and day overhaul, despite, you know, trying very hard. The game definitely doesn't look like a super modern release, even with all the mods, because the options here are limited. There's a lot of mods for this game, but not everyone is focusing on the visuals, unfortunately. Metal Gear Rising does not have the same kind of like visual modding scene as something like Resident Evil or Skyrim or even MGS5. There are mods, sure, but when it comes to clean, stable visual upgrades that keep the game faithful, there are really not that many choices, unfortunately. So this video is not I turn Metal Gear Rising into a next-gen game or anything like that. It's more of a I found a clean way to make Rising look much better and run better and feel nicer to replay today. And especially after spending about 2 or 3 days messing around with texture packs, fixes, and reshade, and cutscene files, and loaders, and all sorts of shit. Like, I think I finally landed on a setup that I'm actually somewhat happy with, and I think this will be, like, you know, nice if you want to replay the game. So, what we're actually using is, in this setup, a high-resolution character texture pack. If I'm not mistaken, these characters have been modeled and, like, you know, touched up by hand, so there's no AI upscaling or anything like that, because I know people tend to get touchy about that. But yeah, the characters, yeah, they look absolutely fantastic in this high resolution character pack. You know, when you first boot up the game on vanilla, the first thing you see is pixelation on Raiden's face, which is not a good look. This actually fixes that and a bunch of other stuff with the like character models, and it affects every character and NPC in the game, I believe. So definitely a must-have. The next thing I'm applying is the Steam006 PC fix, which, you know, fixes a lot of issues that the game has by default with vanilla. What it actually does is it uncaps the resolution, so you can play at anything above 1080p. For whatever reason, when this game came out, resolution was capped to 1080p. Even back then when I played it on a weak laptop, I managed to put the settings up on max. I was like, this is it. This is how the game looks. You know, it wasn't a great experience, and you know, if you play vanilla, it's not going to be a great experience either. And there's not to mention an issue with the frame rate or frame pacing in vanilla. So even if you're getting a stable 60, there is going to be something with the timing. I can't even get into the technicality of it, but that fixes that as well. Right, so definitely a must-have. It basically opens up the path to modding a bunch of stuff as well if you're running this, so highly recommended. There's other ways of doing this, so you don't have to install Steam006 PC Fix, but I just kind of installed it as a all-in-one. So another thing I'm going to be adding on top of that is just a subtle reshade with a bit of ambient occlusion and a bit more saturation for the colors. It's not a massive game changer, but the ambient occlusion that is added with this is quite nice. And of course, you don't have to use the reshade, but I highly recommend it. It is also worth mentioning that this reshade is a bit fat on performance, but other than that, I definitely recommend it. I think it's worth it. We're also going to be using an ASI Loader, so everything plays nicely together, because I had to make a few changes in my config to get both the ASI Loader and Steam006 to work together. So that was a bit of a hassle, but I got it working. I'll provide the files in the description. And last but not least, 60 FPS FMV for cutscenes, right? They're scaled up to 1080p 60 FPS, as they should have been. Makes them much more pleasant to watch. You know, if you're replaying the game, of course you're going to want to watch the FMVs. You're going to want to make sure they're the best quality they can be. Unfortunately, the total is about 20 gig for these FMVs. So, you know, install them if you really want them. They are optional, but I highly recommend them because they look lovely. And that's it. Nothing too insane, but the end result is a much cleaner and sharper and pleasant version of the game. Definitely better than vanilla. And the biggest upgrade by far for me is the character textures. It actually makes the game look almost like, you know, PS4 era, almost. And I think that alone makes the whole thing worth doing. The vanilla textures can look really pixelated up close for some reason. I still don't understand that, because other 360 era games that had way more stuff going on had way better textures than this. I mean, even Dark Souls 1 off the top of my head looked better than Metal Gear Rising in terms of textures, right? So especially pairing this on a modern display with the better, like, you know, character models is definitely much better than just playing vanilla. And it doesn't change the game completely, but removes, I think, the ugliest part, I think, for me in the original presentation. So when it comes to the actual textures for everything else other than character models, I did try messing around with TexMod and UMod. And for the love of me, I could not get TexMod or UMod to work properly. I mean, using UMod would just drop my frame rate to like 2 FPS whenever I used UMod. I couldn't find a way to fix it properly. I used a newer version of UMod, the same thing was happening. And with TexMod, I would maybe get into the game for a couple of minutes and it would either crash, or I'd get to a cutscene and it would crash, or I could get it working, but it would just keep skipping the cutscenes. And the textures didn't look all that much better, in my opinion, using TexMod. And TexMod, as we know, is a favorite on the channel because in Prototype 2 it also gave me a lot of issues. So whenever I'm trying to mod an old game and I see TexMod, I automatically want to just quit because it's shit and old. You can try it, it might work for you, but in my opinion, from the testing and things I've seen, it doesn't really seem to make every texture that much better, and it does cause issues. So it doesn't really play nice with Reshade either, or the Steam006, so there's going to be a lot of working around and a lot of hassle, so only really do it if you want to. I also tested DXVK and Vulkan, and because on paper it sounds like a good idea for almost every game of this era. You get better performance, you just have to suffer for a bit of shaded compilation, yada yada, right? And older DirectX 9 game, modern Vulkan wrapper, you know, potentially better performance and frame pacing makes sense, right? Well, in this game, I don't understand. It broke the game for me completely. I had not just crashes, but strange behavior. When I got to Armstrong, the dude just despawned. Like he didn't appear. He was invisible, and I was getting clapped by invisible, like, you know, character models. At first, I thought it was the texture pack, but no. I removed Vulkan, and that was gone. And then, you know, I tried the Monsoon fight, and that's soft locked for some reason as well. You cannot make this up. So, you know, I know DXVK is, you know, loved by a lot of people, but unfortunately, I do not recommend it for this game. You can try it, you're welcome to try it, but yeah, for this setup, we won't be using Vulkan. So the final versions focus on stability. You know, we're looking at a locked 60 FPS, and obviously you can uncap that, you can go higher than that, but I had very mixed results with anything above 60 FPS. I believe at 120 I started to see a lot of kind of weird bugs and stutters. So my personal recommendation is 60, but feel free to uncap it if you want, or use lossless. And kind of that is what I'd recommend. Because yeah, getting this game to work and operate properly is a bit of a hassle, but I'm going to try and make this setup as easy as I can. In the description, or even in the top pinned comment, I'll provide my configured setup files for this fix and the ASI Loader and Reshade. So you should just be able to drag and drop them into the main game folder, and the game should run, and you should be able to tweak the settings however you want. And to be clear, I'm not re-uploading anyone else's texture mods or cutscene files. Those will be linked separately, and you should download them from the original mod pages to support the creators. My pack is only there to make the loader fix and reshade setup less painful. I'll also include that written guide as I mentioned in the description and pinned comment, and with this exact mod list and folder paths and install order. So is this a remaster? Well, kind of, right? Because it's not a huge transformation in my eyes, and I'm not going to pretend it is. It's not as big of a visual overhaul as, for example, what I did with Dishonored, right? That took like what, a couple of mods, and in my opinion made the game look much better, at least for me visually. But it's definitely a much better way to play Metal Gear Rising today, is if you have, like, you know, problems like me with the visuals. The characters look beautiful, and you know, everything feels less flat. So I definitely recommend you give this a try, just if you want to replay the game or want to give it a refresher. I had a lot of fun making this video, and in all honesty, it's taking me a bit longer to release this video because I've actually been having a lot of fun just playing Rising. So I think I'll need to kind of do like a revisited video at some point for that game, because that is a really unique part of like the Metal Gear franchise, right? So yeah, definitely I definitely recommend it. Just give that a try, and if you do have any issues, let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do. But other than that, I think this is pretty much it. So thank you for watching, and peace out.